You think you know the United States. You've heard the stories of freedom, democracy, and steady progress. But the real history of America? It's far stranger, more chaotic, and way more unbelievable than the polished version you were taught in school. Today, I'm going to share 10 true stories so shocking, they'll permanently rewrite how you see this country. And it all starts with a question you've probably been answering wrong your entire life. Number 1, the country with no official language. What is the official language of the United States? English, right? Wrong. Despite what most people assume, the United States has never declared any official language at the federal level. From its founding, the country was a chaotic mix of English, German, Dutch, French, Spanish, along with hundreds of Native American languages. And when politicians tried to make English official, early leaders rejected it on the grounds that forcing a language would be un-American. Today, over 350 languages are spoken across the nation, and legally not one is supreme. America isn't united by language, it's united by idea. If you think that's unusual, wait till you hear about the time an American city seceded from the United States. For 1 minute. Number 2, the day Key West declared war on America with bread. In 1982, the U.S. Border Patrol set up a roadblock on the only highway into the Florida Keys. Every driver was stopped and searched like they were crossing into a foreign nation. Tourism died. Locals were furious. So Key West Mayor Dennis Wardlow did the most American thing imaginable. He declared independence. He stood in a public square, announced the formation of the Conch Republic, and officially declared war on the United States. Their first act of aggression? They attacked a Navy officer with a loaf of stale Cuban bread. Exactly 1 minute later, they surrendered and immediately demanded $1 billion in foreign aid. And the wildest part? It worked. The roadblock was removed. The Conch Republic still exists today as a symbol of defiant American ridiculousness. But not all rebellions were played for laughs. Number 3, the president who killed a man in a duel. The Oval Office is supposed to represent dignity, but President Andrew Jackson, he was forged in blood and revenge. Long before entering the White House, Jackson got into a bitter feud with a man named Charles Dickinson, one of the best marksmen in the country. Dickinson insulted Jackson's wife. That was enough. Jackson challenged him to a duel. Jackson knew his opponent was faster, so he let Dickinson shoot first. The bullet smashed into Jackson's chest, inches from his heart. Jackson stood his ground, calmly raised his pistol, and fired. Dickinson fell dead. That bullet stayed in Jackson's chest for the rest of his life. And to the American public, it didn't ruin him. It made him a legend. But Jackson wasn't the only president to threaten his own people. Number 4, the president who led an army against Americans. George Washington, the father of the nation, the hero of liberty. But in 1794, he became the only sitting president to lead an army into battle against his own citizens. The Whiskey Rebellion erupted when frontier farmers refused to pay a whiskey tax they saw as tyranny. They torched tax collectors' homes. They formed armed militias. Washington didn't negotiate. He summoned a force of 13,000 troops, mounted his horse, and led them toward Pennsylvania. The rebellion vanished before he arrived. Not a shot was fired, but the message was clear. The new government would rule by law and by force if necessary. And once again, America's greatest war wouldn't be foreign, it would be American versus American. Number 5, America's largest armed uprising since the Civil War. In 1921, West Virginia became a war zone. Over 10,000 coal miners, armed with rifles and dynamite, marched to free imprisoned union workers and overthrow brutal company tyranny. Waiting for them were 3,000 hired gunmen and deputies. What followed was the Battle of Blair Mountain, the largest armed uprising on U.S. soil since the Civil War. 1 million bullets filled the sky. Private planes dropped bombs on American citizens. The standoff only ended when federal troops arrived. The miners laid down their weapons rather than fire on the U.S. Army. They lost the battle, but ignited a movement for labor rights that still echoes today. But sometimes the threat wasn't from within. It came from outside. And hey, if you're still here right now, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now so YouTube knows you're one of the real ones. It helps this video reach more people who need to hear how wild American history really is. All right, let's talk about the moment a foreign army burned the White House to the ground. Number 6. When the White House burned. In 1814, British troops marched into Washington, D.C. and burned it to the ground. The president fled. The Capitol and the White House went up in flames. British officers sat at the president's dinner table, feasted on abandoned food, then hurled torches through the windows. The capital of the United States conquered. Only a sudden storm, possibly a hurricane, stopped the destruction. Some called it divine intervention. Others called it humiliation. Either way, and it proves something, America was fragile. But even the nation's origin story is more complicated than most people realize. Number 7. There were presidents before George Washington. Every child is taught that George Washington was the first president. But that's only technically true. Before the U.S. Constitution, the country was governed under the Articles of Confederation. And under that system, 14 men served as President of the United States and Congress assembled. They had little power, more like moderators than commanders-in-chief. But they held the title. One of them? John Hancock. Another, John Hanson, served a full term and signed official documents as president. So was George Washington the first president? Yes, much of this America. But there was a whole lineup before him, forgotten by history. And speaking of forgotten, sometimes the biggest moments come from quiet signatures on paper. Number 8. The $15 million deal that doubled America overnight. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson bought 828,000 square miles of land from France for just $15 million. The Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the United States for less than 3 cents an acre. The U.S. didn't even ask for all of it. They only wanted the port of New Orleans. But Napoleon, desperate for cash after losing Haiti and facing war with Britain, said, "Why not take the whole thing?" That one deal set the stage for westward expansion, manifest destiny, and the birth of a continental superpower. But not all American legends rode horses. Some moved in secret shadows. Number 9. Harriet Tubman, freedom fighter and war spy. Harriet Tubman is celebrated as the hero of the Underground Railroad, but few know she also became a Union spy and military commander. During the Civil War, she led covert missions behind Confederate lines, gathering intelligence, disguising herself, recruiting scouts. Then came the Combahee River Raid in 1863. Tubman personally led Union gunboats through enemy territory, burned plantations, destroyed supply lines, and freed more than 700 enslaved people in a single night. She was the first woman in U.S. history to lead an armed military operation. A legend in life, not just memory. But perhaps the most mind-bending fact of all is that the Civil War didn't truly end in the 1800s. At least, not financially. Number 10. The last Civil War pension was paid in 2020. Think the Civil War is ancient history? Think again. The last pension check for a Civil War soldier was issued in 2020. It went to Irene Triplett, the daughter of a man who fought in the war. Her father, Mose Triplett, served first for the Confederacy, switched sides, joined the Union, and decades later fathered a child at age 83. Because Irene had disabilities, she qualified to receive his pension for life. And so, more than 150 years after the war ended, the U.S. government was still paying benefits for it. Which means Abraham Lincoln's America touched our own. From bread wars to burning capitals, from secret presidents to living Civil War daughters, America's true history isn't neat, it's chaotic, contradictory, brilliant, terrifying, unbelievable, because it's real. So now I have to ask, which one of these facts blew your mind the most? Tell me in the comments. I'm seriously curious. And if you want more stories like this, the kind they never taught you in school, hit that like button and subscribe, because history isn't dead. It's still breathing. Thanks for watching.